Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another exciting session together with IoT Asia Plus, IIoT India, and IoT Indonesia. We are proud to present to you our first special edition of Web Engagement Series. My name is Talita Sabrina, and today I will be your host for the next 2 hours. Today's topic, we will be discussing about envisioning 5G powered future for Asia. And without further ado, let me introduce our speakers for today. First, please welcome Mr. Alfian Manulang, GM Industrial IoT from Telkomsel Indonesia. Next, we have Ms. Meli Kwa as Head of Mobile and Wireless Research in APAC, Frost & Sullivan. And the next one, Mr. Niraj Pandey as VP Network Engineering and Delivery for Vodafone. And the next one, we have Mr. Sunil David as Regional Director IoT from AT&T, and he will be also our moderator for today. And the last but not least, Mr. Teguh Prasetya as Chairman of Indonesian IoT Association. Okay, it's an honor to have all of speakers on the panel today. Thank you in advance for your time. And before we start the session, I would like to invite you to a very quick poll so that our panelists know you better and can streamline the discussion accordingly. Okay, the poll is on your screen right now. Please scroll along and select the most appropriate option, and do not forget to submit your poll. Okay, while you're submitting your answer, I would like to remind you that you can put your question on the Q&A section down below. And don't forget to address your questions to whom your question wants to be answered from. Okay. So I will close this poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Close the poll. Okay, so let's now see the result, please. Okay, so the first question, there are 49% of audience thinks that a little bit I'm considering to implement to my business. And the second poll, we have about 51% our audience thinks that it's not that simple. There are still a lot of to be adapted. And the last question, we have 47% our audience thinks that it's interesting, but we are need to consider many things before we implement it. Okay, so Mr. Sunil, would you like to elaborate on this before we begin our discussion?
Sure, Talita, and thank you for inviting me to moderate this panel.
Okay, handing over to you now, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Talita. Can you hear me and see me? Yes. The poll results are not surprising. I think many of them are in a wait and watch mode, and so perhaps we'll probably see maybe a year or two from now a lot more people wanting to seriously implement 5G, because I think there are enough and more use cases where 5G could definitely make a big difference. It could be a game changer, and we're going to discuss that in a lot more detail when we actually get to the panel. Can you move to my first slide, please? So good afternoon to all those who have joined us virtually, and a warm welcome to all the esteemed panelists. At the outset, I would like to thank Singex for giving me the opportunity to moderate this panel discussion. Can you move to the next slide, please? Right, now I wanted to start by presenting the slide because if you notice, right from the 1980s when we had 1G and to 2G in the 90s and to 3G 2000 onwards from the millennial, and then to 2010 when we had 4G. 1G to 4G was all about faster speeds, right? So 1G was all about voice, then 2G we started to see a little bit of data, 3G faster speeds, a little bit of video, and what really propelled the video growth was 4G, right? Now 5G is going to be completely game changing, the sense that while 5G is just not about faster speeds, unlike the previous generations, 5G is going to alter our whole experience. It's going to alter the DNA of our experience. And we're talking about user experience. It is a function of 3 or 4 important characteristics: speed, latency, reliability, and security, right? So 5G is definitely offering faster speeds. Latency is going to be very, very low, extremely reliable, and consumers like you and me want all our data to be secured, right? So 5G will alter the DNA of our user experience in dramatic and exciting ways, whether talking about healthcare, retail, manufacturing, and beyond. And all these attributes which are shown here, whether it is the new radio protocol which has been re-architected in the case of 5G, and all these benefits that we're seeing here, whether it's low latency, we're going to touch upon all this while we discuss this in our panel. Can you please move to the next slide? Now, what's the case for change? What are the key drivers to adopt 5G? And I wanted to first start by talking about the lower cost structure, because what you're going to see is you're going to move from a hardware-centric world to our software-focused world, because we are already used to this cliche, which is software is eating the world, right? So a lot of the telecom providers who have been using a lot of hardware in the networks are now virtualizing their network functions, right? So using a combination of software-defined networking and network function virtualization, you need a lot of software to manage the humongous amount of data, right? So we are going to see that shift to software, going to be in massive ways. Secondly, the efficiency, so the spectral efficiency is going to be much better. And also the fact that because you're moving from hardware to a software-centric world, the amount of energy conservation is going to be massive, because you're going to use less hardware, so it's going to be far more energy efficient. Third, and most importantly, the workforce evolution, because the kind of skills that we have today would need a drastic change, right? I mean, because we are going to use so much of data, right? So the need for data scientists, AI, automation is going to play a big part. And hence the need for workforce to transition to roles which are very data oriented. That becomes very, very important. Second is the advent of IoT. And one of the pillars of 5G, which I will touch upon later, is massive machine type communication, because you're going to see full densification of devices, right? So you're going to have about 1 million devices in a 1 square kilometer area. The connection density is very, very high. And this ecosystem requirements, because 5G at the end of the day is an ecosystem play. One provider cannot do it all. The 5G has to collaborate with the hyperscale cloud providers, with the device ecosystem, system integrators, solution providers. All of them have to come together to make this happen. And finally, the enterprise grade experience. I talked about how the experience is going to change for people. The fact that the latency is going to be very, very low, right? You're talking about latency less than 10 milliseconds, anywhere between 1 to 10 milliseconds. We're talking about reliability of 99.59s, right? Extremely reliable. And that's because of the fact that the new radio protocol has been architected in such a way where you're going to get that high reliability. And the speeds, of course, you're talking about 1 gig and much, much more, right? So the enterprise experience is going to be completely different. And that's going to open a number of use cases when it comes to 5G. Next slide, please. Now, there are 5 tech areas when it comes to 5G, which I wanted to very briefly touch upon. And during the panel, the panelists will touch upon this in a little more detail. The first thing which I wanted to touch upon is the fact that it's going to be access agnostic. So integration of, for example, narrowband IoT, which is a good low power WAN technology for IoT, integration of Wi-Fi 6, which is optimized for IoT applications. So a lot of the access is going to be seamlessly integrated into 5G environments. That's one. Secondly, the network, right? So as I mentioned earlier, so operators would have to use a combination of software-defined networking and network function virtualization, and this whole control plane and the user plane changes, right? So the software is going to do all the orchestration of all the data that we're going to see, and this advantage of using network slicing, and we'll probably talk about it a little more detail. But the fact that you can convert, you have a physical infrastructure and you can actually split it into logical slices, right? So you could have one slice for one application and so on and so forth. Third is 5G in combination with edge computing, right? So I think we have started to see use cases for edge, especially when you have requirements where you have a lot of data being generated, say in a manufacturing environment, a lot of events being generated, and you want to respond quickly to that, right? Or even in the case of autonomous cars, autonomous vehicles, where you want to respond faster to any eventuality rather than having to send data to the cloud, right? So 5G plus edge definitely will see a lot more adoption going forward. The transport, whether you talk about front haul, mid haul, or back haul, we're going to see a lot more fiberization happening because you need a lot of fiber to be really take advantage of the high speeds which 5G offers. And finally, the expansion of the device ecosystem, because unlike the previous generations, which was all about mobile phones and tablets, in the case of 5G, it's going to expand to much more, right? You're talking about security cameras and so on and so forth. So the whole device ecosystem is going to change massively going forward. Next slide, please. Right, so very quickly, what are the three fundamental foundational pillars of 5G? The first thing is enhanced mobile broadband, or perhaps even fixed wireless access would come into this. So for a consumer, you're going to definitely get faster speeds, which means that you can really see ultra high definition content on your phones. The amount of time it will take to download movies will be much, much faster. Second one is, ultra reliable, low latency communications, which I call critical communications. So that is again going to throw open a lot more use cases. Anything which is real time, we'll see a lot more adoption of that. And finally, which is very IoT centric, which is massive machine type communications. I touched upon it earlier, but this is another pillar that is really going to propel the growth of IoT going forward. So whether you talk about smart cities, whether you talk about wearables, or inventory control, we'll see a lot more adoption of that in the future. And I just wanted to end by sharing the vision statement of NGMN. NGMN is called Next Generation Mobile Networks. It's an open forum which is funded by world-leading MNOs, and they came up with a very, very nice vision. So I'm just wanting to quote that vision here. It says that 5G is an end-to-end ecosystem to enable a fully mobile and connected society. It empowers value creation towards customers and partners through existing and emerging use cases, delivered with consistent experience and enabled by sustainable business models. I think this is a very holistic vision statement, because while 5G is definitely going to create a lot more monetization opportunities for telecom providers, it is going to benefit consumers, it is going to benefit industries and to societies. At the end of the day, what you really want is technology to touch the lives of people, right? And I think that is what we should be aiming for. So having set this context, I now want to move to the panel discussion. We have a very diverse set of panelists representing different industries. So I'm going to start by posing my first question to Millie from Frost & Sullivan. Millie, thank you for joining us. And my question to you, Millie, is can you share, based on all the research that Frost and Sullivan have done, a global perspective, and even covering Asia Pac as it relates to 5G adoption and the rollouts that has happened thus far? Millie, over to you. Okay, I think Millie has had some connectivity challenges. So I'll move to Neeraj, and then I'll probably come back to Millie. Neeraj, welcome to the panel. My question to you, Neeraj, is can you very briefly talk about what Vodafone was doing in the 5G space, and also some of the learnings from an industry standpoint as it relates to 5G monetization? Neeraj.
Yeah, thanks, Sunil, and good morning, everybody. When we talk about 5G, I'll just extrapolate whatever you have captured very nicely, Sunil, is that 5G is more than a technology. It's an ecosystem, and it is taking the benefit beyond the individuals to the society. And when we talk about 5G, so it is talking about completely re-architecting the existing network. So they're very powerful paradigms like control plane, user plane separation. You have already touched upon softwareization of the network. there's going to be a lot of automation and use of artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. Uh, when we talk about the initial rollout of the 5G, so since the rollout has not started in India, so I'll be talking mostly about the Europe. So it is right now, whatever commercial deployment has taken place, it is concentrating mostly on the top vertex of the triangle, which you have shown, is that is for EMBB, that is enhanced mobile broadband. But there are a lot of use cases, and also we are seeing the deployment of the private 5G networks. So I'll just quote two examples. One is that we have deployed a 5G network in Ford's manufacturing unit in UK. And the second is about an electric car manufacturing unit in Germany. And though it is still a kind of POC, but the initial results are very, very encouraging. And this is kind of first step towards what is known as the smart manufacturing or industry 4.0. Uh, the next wave is going to be more towards the multi-access edge computing or edge computing, where we have already got into collaboration with AWS. And this is going to be really the game changer, because that will enable a host of applications on the ultra reliable low latency communication. And we will see a lot of developments in the area of V2X, that is vehicle to anything or vehicle to everything. The second is smart grid. When we see the proliferation of the electrical vehicles, and also the world is moving towards renewable sources of energy, then the smart grid will become very important. Why? Because the renewable sources of energy, particularly solar energy and all, they don't produce the energy constantly, and the integration to the grid is very, very critical. That is one part. And similarly, when so many electrical vehicles will be hooked to the charging stations, then it's going to be huge demand on the electric grid. So this is one potential area which is going to enormously benefit the industry and the individuals. Now coming back to the network slicing, which is going to be another game changer, though we are still far away from that, and because the network slicing will require end-to-end network automation and orchestration. So you should be able to orchestrate the network completely from the RAN transport up to the core. And there are significant progress which is happening in all these three areas. So 5G core, as all of you know, is already based on the cloud native principles with the 5G service based architecture, where we are talking about containerized microservice based architecture for the 5G core, and splitting the functionalities, particularly in the control plane functions, into smaller blocks, and which gives a lot of flexibility in terms of scalability. Also another significant development is the Open RAN or ORAN initiative, which is being widely adopted by everybody, and that will again disintegrate or disaggregate the RAN blocks into containerized components, and we are already talking about the DU, CU, and RU split. And the transport side also, the wide scale adoption of transport SDN will make your entire transport network configurable and software definable. So when all these building blocks are in place, then you will be able to create slices or logical networks as per the requirement of the industry or end users, both in the horizontal direction as well as in the vertical direction. So you can create a slide vertically for say, for example, for the automotive companies, for Hyundai's, for Nissan, for BMWs and all that, and they can use it end to end, or in the horizontal segment where you can segment the or create the slice for different users. So there are a lot of exciting times ahead, and there are so many use cases which are being tried out by different operators. Unfortunately, I'll not be able to tell much about that because they are not in the public domain. But if you just click on the Google and you will find n number of cases, and they are going to benefit the society in significant ways, in the sense that uh, we are already discussing, and the entire world is worried about the climate change, and 5G with its lean architecture, which is highly energy efficient, and also the kind of uh, use cases which I have discussed, like smart grid, like smart cities, intelligent traffic management, smart manufacturing, will unleash a new wave of productivity, and at the same time with lot of efficiency. So we see exciting times ahead, and as the 5G proliferates throughout the world, then we are going to see significant development taking place.
Right. Thanks, Neeraj. You kind of covered quite a lot. You talked about some of the use cases. You talked about Open RAN, which is a widely debated topic today. We talked about network slicing. I think good number of use cases for that. So I'll come back to you in the next segment with a couple of follow-up questions. So Millie, we lost you for a minute. My question to you, Millie, is can you share, based on the research which Frost and Sullivan has done, in terms of the global and also the Asian perspective as it relates to 5G adoption and rollouts, Millie? Millie? Can you hear me, Millie? I think you're muted. Millie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you?
Yes. Please go ahead. You heard my question,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Yes, I did. Yeah, sure. So with regards to a global perspective and also an APAC perspective, I think let's start with global first. Globally, to date, approximately 84 telcos have launched commercial 5G services in something like 36 countries. I think the attraction is the fact that 5G promises to provide high speeds, low latency, bigger network capacity connection, all the great things that you have already covered. But I feel as an analyst covering this space, the reality is somewhat different. So my first observation is that an indicator of 5G adoption for consumer segment is perhaps the availability and scale of 5G enabled smartphones. Today, 5G enabled smartphones are more widely available and significantly cheaper and expected to become even cheaper in time, especially in China. In China, over half of the Chinese smartphones sold in the first 3 months of 2020 or this year featured support for 5G. So it's expected by the end of this year, more than 170 million Chinese smartphones will be connected to 5G networks globally. This is a lot. So on the flip side, in the US and perhaps Europe, iPhone is the device of choice for them. And 5G smartphones in the US has grown by almost 4 times. Their market share has grown from 3% of total mobile phone sales in January to 14% in August 2020. The increase in sales was largely driven by Apple's 5G version or iPhone 12. However, as an analyst, I contest that the arrival of iPhone 12 is not the trigger for innovation as some of us are expecting. I think that for innovation to arrive in the coming months, I think largely the part of innovating has already started or had already started some time ago. So my second observation is that the COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on 5G adoption. This has impacted both ways. So in one hand, it has hindered, on the other hand, it has accelerated. So for instance, while the COVID-19 pandemic has shifted consumer behavior and may in fact hinder the demand for 5G enabled smartphones. So due to economic recession, consumers will reduce spending, especially on non-essential items, and are unlikely to purchase a new phone within the next few years. We took a quick look at how Samsung was doing this year. So Samsung launched its 5G smartphone prior to the pandemic, but just having a quick look at its Q1 profits, it was actually at a 5-year low. On the other hand, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the need for more broadband and higher speeds as people are now staying and working from home. For example, in May 20 in South Korea, mobile operators have reported traffic increases of 13% to reach something between 45 and 60% of the deployed capacity. In the same period, in the UK, BT reported 35 to 60% increase in fixed broadband usage. While in the United States, Verizon reported 47% increase in the use of collaboration tools, and AT&T likewise reported increase in traffic of 23%. All of these report consistently globally that the demand for broadband was driven by COVID and the rising need for high bandwidth intensive applications such as gaming, video conferencing, and streaming services. So now, while we agree that COVID-19 pandemic has rapidly increased traffic demand, it, however, has not translated directly into additional revenues for mobile operators. There have been reports of late that we are now starting to see marginal impact to mobile operator revenues and profitability. As a result, telcos around the world are adopting and opting for network sharing and to fasten a rollout of 5G. Despite the adverse economic impacts, COVID-19 has somewhat increased the urgency for 5G deployment. 5G deployment will require large amounts of investments. Telcos pressured by high costs have resulted in network sharing. This we see a lot happening like of late and not directly linked to COVID. So we've seen in like South Korea, operators like SK, KT, LG, U+, and SK Broadband have implemented initiatives for shared infrastructure to avoid redundant investments in 5G networks. In Japan, there's been partnerships between KDDI and SoftBank in the form of common ownership of network infrastructure. In China, China Telecom announced plans to realize cost savings through jointly building 5G network. In the UK, Vodafone, Telefonica agreed to share passive and active. In Spain, Vodafone and Orange similarly agreed to share mobile and fixed network. The list can go on, and it only testifies to the point that operators see the value in 5G. However, going about it alone is not something that's common as we used to. My third observation covers the enterprise segment. During the COVID-19 era, 5G adoption for the enterprise segment been driven by digital transformation. 5G adoption, we expect, will lean more towards the enterprise segment, slower impact on the consumer segment. Pre-COVID, enterprises around the world have already embarked on digital transformation and this COVID-19 pandemic has actually brought attention and accelerated the need to digitalize. So COVID-19, while it's led to temporary closure of businesses, increased remote working and pressure on revenue margins for most enterprises, it has actually also accelerated digital transformation within enterprises to enable and optimize business operations. So for enterprises, 5G enabled use cases that will provide value in terms of cost savings, improve efficiencies, new business models, and enhanced customer experience are the immediate reasons for opting for 5G. So, however, if all things equal, we think that the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted most verticals. The supply chain was not across the world, and this has actually also hampered the rollout of 5G. So many countries have delayed their 5G developments due to COVID. Pressure on the telco revenue margins may have also contributed to the delay of rollout for 5G. However, it's not all gloomy from here. We are here right now hearing of things picking up, and we know that the telecommunication industry is highly resilient in economic downturns. Therefore, Frost & Sullivan expects that the impact of the pandemic will be short-term and is expected to recover over the next 1 to 2 years.
Right, thanks. Thank you, Millie, for that perspective. I think you made one very interesting point about the fact that for the telecom providers, they just cannot do it on their own, right? I think they need to partner with others in the ecosystem to really collaborate and take solutions to customers, right? I think that becomes very important from a 5G standpoint, right? So I'll come back to you later on with a few more questions. I'm moving now to Pa Alfian, who represents Telecomcell. So Pa Alfian, welcome to the panel. And my question to you is, how is Telecomcell trying to leverage the 5G opportunity within Indonesia? Your initial comments, please.
Yes, thank you, Chanel. So I think 5G, the opportunity lies on two segments. First is the consumer, and second is on enterprise. So on consumer, I think the most very clear, I think the EMBB, Enhanced Mobile Broadband. So what we do currently, we have, I think, two products. While we are starting from 4G, we don't need to start it in the 5G, but 5G will bring greater experience. So we have the fixed wireless mobile access. We call it Orbit. Just launched almost 6 months ago, and it's grow very rapidly because Indonesia is the country where the mobile first. So the society connect to the internet, not through PC, but most of them is from mobile first. So sorry, can you hear? I just being mute. So Indonesia is a mobile first internet society. So people know internet from the mobile phones. So with very, I think now currently 15 to 17% on the fixed broadband penetration. So mobile is very important, where the digital economy running on mobile phones. So giving experience to Indonesian consumer to the mobile phone later on with 5G, I think it's very crucial. So with fixed wireless access, it will fill the gap where the fixed mobile broadband cannot serve, and it's a huge opportunity. And while we also doing it very full digital, so from order taking into delivery, everything is digital. So I think that's create an even better experience. So second on consumer is actually on gaming, cloud gaming that needs very low latency. I think where the consumer area we can tap more opportunity. Second one on enterprises. So this one is very tricky, I think, because you need to look as operator where your assets are. So where your core competence. So when you can use your asset smartly, then you can tap some potential opportunity in that. So if you take a look on Indonesia landscape in 5G, I think number one is industrial, like manufacturing, utilities. I think some of analysts mentioning that it is 40% of the area. But coming back again, is it telco area? If I'm talking to like Telkomsel as a telco provider, yes, we are not very strong in that area. But however, we can collaborate. So due to market attractiveness, some of initiative we are already having since the 4G, while we are jump into 5G later on. Hopefully next year, I think the government has some plan how then Indonesia on roll out on 5G. So we built first in the 4G. We can do it a private network in 4G. Then we pick some use cases. So there are, I mean, it is you have to trial fast, learn fast, and also fail fast, and then you have to pivot again. So there is no silver bullet that this is the right use case. We have to really to test one by one, and then seeing the customer problem again. So I think the point of collaboration is very important for telco. So we have some initiative with we have like IoT labs working with some community, university. We do hackathon. We do also involve on acceleration, incubation on IoT startup, and we do also some investment. So all the things are being executed in Telkomsel on how then actually we tap those opportunities, because we don't want to be providing connectivity, but also some digital services to our customers, so that we are not left behind some of this playing this very marginal margin on the connectivity. I think there is no straight answer. We have to try by one, but we have some focus in manufacturing, industrial, utilities, and transport and logistics, where currently Telkomsel plays very much in the IoT ecosystem. I think that's the problem.
Right. So I think you made one very important point, Alfian, that that I think the 5G use cases, I think that will evolve over a period of time, right? I mean, as you collaborate with other partners, you start seeing a lot more use cases evolve. And you also touched upon fixed wireless access. Do you see fixed wireless access being adopted by enterprises as a backup to their existing internet connection, or replacing their terrestrial fiber? Is that a potential opportunity?
There are some alternative product to that, like a backup. So there are some technology, they call it SD-WAN, software defined wide area network, that currently quite very hot in Indonesia. We have also that product. So currently industry or enterprise mostly rely on this fiber optic, IP, MPLS. Then when they try to start using cloud, then it is very rigid to maintain the network, simplify those network configuration. So actually by providing like SD-WAN, you can connect to the cloud where your data center in maybe those big name Azure, Amazon, Alibaba, Google, then you can directly connect, and then you can ship out of the traffic that is very important traffic, transactional, you put it your IP, MPLS, but some other application, you put it directly on the internet, so that your cost will be maintained, and then actually your program, your go-to-market program will be still be rolling out easily and without maintaining a complicated network. That's some of the area. Yeah, you can do fixed wireless, but there are other options like SD-WAN. That's my in Telkomsel experience.
Right. Thanks. Thank you, Alfian. I'm moving over to Parth, Tego, and thank you for joining this panel. And my question to you would be, what are the trends that you're seeing in Indonesia from a 5G perspective? And maybe if you can talk about IoT adoption. Will 5G really propel IoT adoption going forward in Indonesia?
Okay, thank you, Sunil, and good afternoon, everybody, including all the panelists. For sure, IoT adoption in Indonesia is start growing ahead. And as of our prediction that end of 2022, it will be 400 million of IoT devices, and the total market in 2025 will be 120 billion of US dollar. That kind of prediction will be, of course, it will be affected also by pandemic so far, especially when my colleague talking about the implementation of IoT within the manufacturing, for sure. That's slowing down. But again, another up sector that is also affected by the pandemic if the increasing of the adoption, technology adoption or transformation in the healthcare industry. That's also some opportunities that we are aiming and we are going into it, especially in Indonesia. as we all know that the pandemic will not disappear. COVID will not disappear. It will transform anyway. Vaccine is here, but again, all the new normal way of life will be totally changed. Therefore, the 5G, it is necessary to be here because movement or the data movement, people movement is restricted, and more bandwidth is also required, not on the crowded area like big city and so on, but it is moving to suburban, moving to the housing area. That's 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 basically before the pandemic. It is not anticipated by all telcos around the globe, and that means more bandwidth is required, and also more and more applications supposed to be done remotely, especially for the home working, study at home, everything from home now becoming, necessity. And that means also we also seeing some spike on the smart home adoption in Indonesia. Right now, it's more than 1.5 million of home in Indonesia is becoming smart. They have to be smart. Otherwise, they cannot work at home. They cannot, you know, making everything at home, study at home, and so on and so forth. But again, this doesn't mean that 5G will answer everything. No, because of we should have a clear we should have a clearance first on the spectrum side. For example, which spectrum we should adopt? Is it millimeter wave? Is it sub 6 gig? Or is it unlicensed spectrum of frequency? That's number one. Number two, the movement of open access, including including open run, massive MIMO, optimized OFDM, and so on. So moving from the hardware to software, it should also include the development of its ecosystem. When its ecosystem mature enough, yes, for sure, everybody it is make a clear decision to go ahead with Open Run, for example. But since it's not mature enough on that sense, it need to be developed first. It need to be stabilized. It need to be tested. It need to be proved to the market. And then the third list is about the transport itself. Not especially country like Indonesia, where we have 18,000 of islands, surrounding by all nation. Not all of the villages has a fiber optic backhaul on it. Even big operator like Telkomsel, they got 50,000 of 4G BTS. Now it's moving to 100,000 of 4G BTS. Not all of 100,000 of 4G BTS is connected through the fiber optic backhaul, which which is necessary to the home user, to the BTS itself, to provide more and more broadband. If you are saying 5G, whereas one of customer can get at least 1 gigabit per second, so meaning it should have more than 10 gig at least as a backhaul to their base station. Then this one need to have open transport to be implemented. This means it should have fiber optic to their BTS station. So the challenge to have a fiber optic BTS or backhauling strategy, it's also important for countries like Indonesia. And then the finally is about the core system itself. 5G is new radio, it's new technology. Now the movement towards NFV, SDN, it's becoming a must because of this flexibility that is given by transport, given by the access, even now moving to the core itself. The core should be smart enough, should be open enough, should be flexible enough to adopt the slicing, the needs of the customer itself. So again, this combination need to be proved, need to be implemented first on the small scale. Like I said, why what about 5G in Indonesia, IoT over 5G? Yes, based on the current study, cellular IoT it's becoming the ultimate of the IoT connectivity when it's there. As you might know, right now 5G is based on the latest development is still on the 3GPP release 14, right? Not even 15 or 16.
16, right?
Yeah,
16, right?
16. Yeah. But all the major vendors implementation and trials now is only talking about MBB, mobile broadband, not even talking about, hey, of course, through the standardization, they said release 16, it is, you can have 1 million connection and 1 kilometer square. This is what IoT wants, right? But until now, there is no field trial addressing those commercially as well. So challenge for IoT is actually simple. If you can simplify the connectivity, if you can enhance the security of it, and then you can get more and more penetration towards the nation. As I said, it's as in Indonesia, we got potential to have 400 million of devices over the next 2 years if we can get the right technology, the right network, and also the right business case that can be used and utilized to adopt those demands. So that is to answer your question.
Right. Thank you, Pategu. And you mentioned about fiberization in the backhaul, right? So, like in India today, only about 20% or 25% of our towers are fiberized. How's the situation in Indonesia? Is there still a lot more fiber that needs to be laid across to improve backhaul connectivity?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
That's why we need to ensure first that all the backhaul is being fiberized, especially for the 4G first. After that, then moving to the 5G is get easier. But again, in Indonesia, it's similar. It's only 20% has been fiberized. And moving forward, of course, all 4G should be fiberized. Well, I'm not talking about the percentage, but all 4G must be fiberized. Otherwise, we cannot get, and all the customer cannot get and cannot enjoy the benefit of mobile broadband itself.
Right. Thank you, Pategu. I'm moving back to Millie. And since we are trying to see how 5G can really power Asia, and I think today Asia leads, right, in terms of adoption compared to Europe and North America in terms of number of subscriptions, right, Millie? China, Korea, all put together, we are ahead of the game. Hopefully, we'll be able to maintain this in the future as well. Now, coming to specifically, some of the 5G use cases when it comes to smart cities, right? And maybe if you can touch upon, how 5G could be used for smart city use cases, maybe if possible, even touch upon Singapore Smart Nation initiative, whether they would be leveraging 5G for any of the requirements, Millie.
Well, I think when it comes to 5G within smart cities, my first observation is that smart cities encompass a lot of the use cases from other verticals. So smart city on its own it just means that let's look at all the use cases that we have in all verticals and put it within a single place and test it all together. Because this was my observation when we did a paper on smart cities. We were trying to find out what were the use cases for smart cities, and we found that the use cases were the same use cases that were being implemented elsewhere. I think part of this has to do with the lack of use cases that are really able to showcase 5G's capabilities to the best of its abilities. So with that in mind, I think I would just shift my coverage more to 5G in general, a little bit away from smart cities specific. So today, I think what we're seeing in APAC, and to your point that, we have the higher numbers out here in APAC, is that the 5G is being used to combat COVID-19. And COVID-19 has accelerated and highlighted the need for 5G applications within vertical markets. The first place that we have seen this done well is healthcare. And we saw this while after the world was under lockdown. We saw that China was the first to put the technology into use. Within the healthcare sector, in a few field hospital in Wuhan, 5G thermometers were used to screen visitors, smart bracelets were used to monitor patients' vital signs, all of this through a central platform. Also, China Mobile launched a 5G-based online platform to provide free of charge COVID-19 diagnosis and treatment. Away outside of China, in Thailand, the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society, and together with Huawei, provided artificial intelligence solutions and 5G technology to Siriraj Public Hospital, also to fight the COVID-19. So in APEC, while I was covering 5G in the COVID era, sorry for era, I hope it's not an era, there were relatively few areas where robots were being used, and Thailand was one, and that's why, I mean, outside of China anyway, and that's why we're trying to showcase a bit more on Thailand. So AI was used in place to assist doctors to analyze computed tomography or CT scans, quantify results of infected cases with high accuracy. Besides this, the regulator, the National Broadcasting and Telecommunication Commission, partnered with the Thai State Hospital. Again, Huawei was part of this use case to launch an unmanned vehicle using 5G to deliver contactless medical supplies across the hospital. So in future healthcare systems, we think will greatly benefit from advanced connectivities, technologies such as 5G in hospitals, as it would enable new applications and use cases to improve efficiency and, of course, customer experience of patients. Another vertical I would like to briefly touch on is manufacturing. And I think this is quite related to the IIoT context that we are addressing today. Within this sector, China deployed smart 5G warehouses, which enabled products to be sorted around the clock through use of robotic arms, thus limiting human involvement and reducing the spread of COVID-19. So in future, the use of robotics within manufacturing, we hope will address the labor supply, lack of labor supply, for example, through aging population, and this we expect more and earlier from Japan, and the need for social distancing due to COVID-19. APEC will lead the 5G adoption for consumer segment, driven by increasing demand for mobile data and broadband. And as Sunil mentioned, major cities across the APEC have rolled out 5G since South Korea spearheaded the region in 2019. So as of August 2019, South Korea has something like 8 to 9 million 5G subscriptions, accounting for approximately 15% of the country's mobile base, while in China, the country had more than 100 million 5G subscriptions, right about the same time, accounting for approximately 10% of the country's subscription base. Just putting that next to what GSMA estimates would be the 5G subscriptions in 2025, they expect something like 670 million, and for 5G to account to up to 60%. So this is quite, in our view as analysts, is quite optimistic, especially if you're considering the consumer segments. In future, telcos, we think, will leverage on the large subscriber base and the technology to offer new forms of entertainment. For example, immersive viewing, virtual reality, augmented reality. Although AR, VR has not really taken off in a big way yet, we think that it will, if in combination with gaming, for example, will result in new revenue streams and monetization opportunities in the consumer segment. So I just wrap up with one last point here, and in the point is that in APEC, 5G we think will support digitalization of SMEs and large corporations. We expect that 5G will accelerate the digital economy agenda and journey towards Industry 4.0 of countries in APAC. So it's no surprise that the telcos have been working in this area, and COVID has actually accelerated developments in the area. So APAC is home actually to something like 620 million SMEs, and given the impact of COVID-19, it has propelled SMEs to embrace digitalization in order to keep up with the rapid changes in the economy. As a result, telcos in the region are leveraging on 5G to support digitalization of SMEs. There are many examples of this, we can go on. So basically, to wrap this part, in the future, we expect that 5G will transform the way SMEs will operate their business, and will provide benefits such as efficient, enhanced customer experience, and improvements in work experience. The only thing that we are keen to look more for evidence of is the ability of digitalization to translate into the efficiency and profitability of these SMEs and large corporations. When there's more visible proof, then more will adopt. I think that's
right. Thank you. So you touched upon healthcare, manufacturing, and I think when you talked about how China was using 5G, especially during the pandemic, I recollect, I think the first ever remote surgery using 5G was done in China last year, if I'm not mistaken. You can probably check the YouTube video of that. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, but on that point, Sunil, I just wanted to add, just jump in. It was up until the lockdown periods that I think many of us will agree that 5G was more demonstrated as technology, what it can do, and not necessarily that we needed remote surgery in an urgent way. What COVID has done, I feel, and all of you can just jump in, and I'm sorry to hijack your panel. I just wanted to get in that basically COVID has actually opened the eyes of the operators and vendors for them to see where the real need is and help the industry address meeting of the needs, not
right.
about technology demonstration. What 5G can do is so fantastic, but no, do people need it?
Very good point, Meili, because I don't think anyone would have envisaged that 5G could be used for certain set of use cases which may not have thought of before, and you have started to use 5G maybe for some of those use cases. Yes. Neeraj, coming to you, Neeraj. So you talked about in your earlier comments, you talked about perhaps using private 5G, right? I mean, so do you see a lot more private 5G networks using, say, unlicensed spectrum? Do you see some of those use cases emerge coming forward, Neeraj?
Yes, definitely. So because particularly the automobile segment, so they are going to use 5G private network in a big way, and finally this is going to be the precursor before the network slicing gets launched, because once network slicing gets launched and it gets stabilized, so these customers will migrate to network slicing. I have seen, if you permit me, because there are a lot of technical questions which have been asked. People are questioning about the viability, about the cost of 5G, and there are challenges about 5G will require 100% fiberization. Without that, it would not take. So, if you permit, then I would like to extrapolate on those. So. The first thing is that the 5G and why it is called the ecosystem, because it is not confined, if you talk about, say, spectrum, to one spectrum. So it takes care about the low band, mid band, and millimeter wave. So low band is less than 2 gigahertz. Mid band is the main deployment which is happening currently in the Europe and other regions, 3.5 and 4.5 gigahertz, and high band is that millimeter wave. And there's very interesting thing in millimeter wave. There's a concept called IBH, integrated backhaul. So where you can use the same spectrum for your backhaul requirement also, because the bandwidth is huge. You're getting bandwidth up to the extent of 400 megahertz and all that, and also the target segment is different. So when we talk about millimeter wave with small cells, so it's going to take care about the if you talk about industrial IoT, then your industrial plants, the corners, the industrial plants, and also about hotspots, the stadiums, and all that. So that fits there, and those are the areas, or the very busy urban areas, where the laying of the fiber is really very difficult. And if you talk about the rural areas or the semi-urban areas, we've got both the options, the mid-band as well as the low band area. That is number one. Number two, the technology which is known as advanced or active antenna system, or the MIMO category, or the massive MIMO. So that in turn greatly enhances the coverage as well as the capacity of the 5G system. And if you use millimeter wave particularly, then these can be utilized very nicely. Now, coming back to initial deployment around the EMBB or enhanced mobile broadband, yes, that is correct, because the initial deployment is happening with the existing 4G core, that is LTE. It is known as non-standalone deployment.
Yeah.
So we have not gone into the release 15 per se, except for the NR. NR has come on the fixed, which is basically new radio, or talks about this, the radio part. But for the core part, the cloud native part, the service-based architecture is just in the phase of being deployed. And there are greenfield operators like Rakuten and Dish Wireless, which are going straightway with the 5G standalone architecture. And once they go with the 5G standalone architecture, then probably the other two use cases, that is massive machine type of communication, ultra level low latency communication, will also come into play. Particularly for the ultra level low latency communication, you have got the edge computing, the mobile edge computing, which is very much required. And as Pa Alfian has said, that there is a collaboration which is happening with the hyperscale companies. So in US also with the Verizon and AWS, and in Europe also with Vodafone and AWS, that collaboration is happening. There are a lot of panelist questions on the cost and all that, so I'll touch base upon during our Q&A session.
Sure.
But the best part about 5G technology is that it is based on cloud, and it is highly elastic, highly flexible, and we are moving away from the paradigm of hardware rigid network architecture to a very flexible, scalable, and dynamic architecture. And it gives a lot of flexibility in terms of cost, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of scalability, and all that.
Yeah, so we are moving to a programmable network, a more application aware and more intelligent network, right?
Exactly. So programmable network and declarative network, moving away from imperative network, where you do the device by device configuration. You just declare your intent, also an intent-based network. But it's going to take time, because telcos are slow to evolve, and unless they monetize the cost of investment which they already have made, then it is difficult to move into that territory. That is another thing. And second thing is that not all the nations of the world are very high ARPU. So if you take, for example, the Far Eastern countries like South Korea, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, or in the right side like US and all that, where the ARPU is very, very high. Unlike Europe, India, and other places where the ARPU is low, and unless they really able to monetize the cost of investment, there is no capital free for the new investment. So all those factors also play a lot of role in this thing.
Right. Thanks, Neeraj, for that. Moving to Pa Alfian. Pa Alfian, you talked about logistics.
Wow, it's cut off.
I think we lost Sunil.
I think we lost the host. Is it?
Hello? Okay. Hello, can you see me now?
Still cannot see you, but your voice is clear.
Yeah. Hello. I just lost connection for a minute. Can you hear me and see me now?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Okay. We can hear you, but cannot see you.
Oh, okay, okay. The sudden blip in my connectivity. But my question to Pa Alfian is about use of 5G in logistics and supply chain, because supply chain was very badly disrupted during the COVID situation. So do you see going forward a lot more perhaps 5G deployment for supply chain and logistics, maybe digital twin for a supply chain? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I think in logistics and supply chain there are two areas, right? The one that need the high bandwidth and ultra reliable and low latency. That's where the manufacturing area can play, right? So like automated guided vehicle. Then actually we've been asked by some of the customer as well to do this private one for AGV. They have problem mostly is about network. Then 5G promise that this ultra reliable and low latency, where they can extend their network around their surroundings very wide and can cover very good. Currently, mostly they are using Wi-Fi, but unfortunately, seems that it is not good enough for them. So those areas that you can serve on supply chain within those manufacturing area, but those who are more mobile outside, then you can use this narrowband network like NB-IoT or another LP1 technology that you can do like vaccine tracking, like this pandemic, then where the vaccine will coming, and then how then you can maintain the quality. It should be kept between 2 until 8. Then actually you can use those sensor to track and also to give you what are the states and the condition. Then the play of 5G can role can be played this in the supply chain. The other things I think very sure that you can some in the supply chain you can track whether first your fleet, you can track your driver. So you, with mobile edge computing with AI within in the cabin, then you can detect the driving behavior of the driving behavior, and also you can do like ADAS to give notify alert on forward line collision, and then if you get out from the lane, so that's can be played as well in the 5G area. And also on the cargo, one of the sample that I thinking about the vaccine, that you can maintain those vaccine using this 5G, right?
Right. Thank you, Pa Alfian. Moving over to you, Pa Tegu. So we kind of covered use of 5G potentially in in manufacturing, healthcare, logistics. How about retail? Indonesia is a big, large retail market, right? So do you see potential for 5G, say, in the retail sector within Indonesia?
Yeah, we think that on 2025, the 5G will also used by retail at least 30% of total retailers in Indonesia. And for sure, with the promise of 5G, whereas low latency and then high bandwidth and high reliability, security, and so on and so forth. But again, my stressing line is business case. Indonesia is like India. India is number one in the world for the cheapest ARPU. Indonesia is second of the cheapest ARPU thing. So it will also, need to have a collaboration among all the 5G operators in Indonesia, like Telkomsel and so on, because they are on the fierce competition towards the margin itself, its margin. So since we just got the omnibus law, which is available now for operator to share the passive network, also the active network, it's also open up the opportunity for all operator in Indonesia to collaborate, especially for the 5G, whereas needed, at least 100 megahertz bandwidth for the sub 6 gigahertz and millimeter wave, it needs at least 400 megahertz of bandwidth, need huge bandwidth, to serve more and more customer, meaning more coverage as well as more devices or more uh, sensors to be onto the network itself. So again, other than manufacture, healthcare, retail, Indonesia is also pretty unique situation. Whereas We have agriculture industry is also being affected by this 5G introduction. Home, like fixed home broadband, is also affected dramatically because most of Indonesia now still rely on mobile network connectivity. So home broadband will be also affected. Other than that, the transportation, mining, public sector like smart city is also there, financial sector, as well as telecom and media itself, because now new media is coming, and also, the trend of moving towards digital media from the analog media is there. Our omnibus law is also mentioning that all free-to-air analog TV should be switched off by 2022, meaning that all should migrate to digital channels. Whereas 5G has a huge opportunity to capture the market as well. So that is an overview of 5G opportunity across all the sector, including the IoT penetration as well,
Right.
in
Thanks,
support
Pagu.
of 5G.
Yeah, thanks, Pathegu. In fact, you talked about low ARPUs. So it's so interesting that as we transition from 1G to 4G, while we got higher speeds, the ARPU of operators have actually come down as we moved from 1G to 2G to 3G and 4G. So perhaps with 5G, we'll probably see the situation slightly different, and there will be enough and more monetization opportunities for the operators, perhaps. I just wanted to take you on the Pak Tegu on agriculture because we didn't touch upon it. And actually that relates to one question that we also got from the audience before about affordability of 5G, because you're talking about use of 5G in agriculture, and obviously cost will play a big factor. It has to be affordable for the masses, right? So how, what's your view on that, Path Egu, in terms of how do we make it affordable, especially for the masses?
Well, of course, if we are saying about the promise of the open access, open transport, open core, it will reduce about until up to 40% of the total capex itself, right? That's number one. Number two, when all operator can share the spectrum started from the passive infrastructure toward the active, even the core itself can be shared, then another 40% of efficiency that they can achieve. Meaning in totals, 5G networks theoretically can be 60% more efficient compared to 4G network at large, okay? So if this basic principle is there, and if we are coming to the market, meaning that offering to the market per megabyte, per gigabyte even, then become cheaper as well. It is not necessarily reflected that price to the market should be decreasing by 90% or 80%. No, meaning keep the ARPU as it is, then you can get more EBITDA margin out of it, because you can operator can maximizing all the resources, their operation resources as well, and therefore they can increase EBITDA margin. When they can increase EBITDA margin, meaning the health of the operator is increasing as well. Bottom line is increase.
Right, got it. I think what is very important is that operators should innovate around the business models, because I don't think the old models of offering services and solutions to companies would work. They definitely have to innovate around their business models. I think that is very clearly emerging. I want to come to Neeraj now.
Yeah, I'll just add to first on the Tegu's point of view about the cost and affordability. So there's very important paradigm shift which 5G will bring. Currently, we operate in a regime of always on network. And if you look at the network utilization, it never goes beyond on an average 30 to 40%, but your network is always on. And with the adoption of the cloud native technologies, about the disaggregated architecture, about the on-demand scalability, so that is going to reduce the cost of the network drastically. And you have to put, and that is what I spoke about, the 5G NR, which is a very lean architecture, because no, it does not use this, even the control signal when it is not required. And that is not only, so one thing is that we are going to open up the network, we are going to use the open protocols. So if you know, then the service based architecture, we are moving away from the proprietary protocol and we are going for the HTTP based protocol. And also that's a disaggregation, open RAN and all that. So that is your cost of sourcing will be much reduced. That is number one. So the capex will be lower, as well as if you're not keeping the network always on, or rather you are scaling it on demand, then your OPEX is also going to reduce substantially. And if you're going to reduce the OPEX substantially, naturally, your cost of operation is low and you can pass on the benefit to the masses. That is going to be very, very important. And third thing, which you have rightly pointed out, that 5G opens up vast new areas of monetization, which was not existing. So you were running only after charging plan of per megabit data or something like that. So you can move away when you are talking about the smart manufacturing, smart cities, smart grid, smart healthcare, wearable devices, a lot many things. So then your monetization opportunities gets expanded and you can afford to cross subsidize your mass customers. Yeah.
Right, thanks. Nice perspective.
Sunil, I would like to add on Neeraj,
Sure.
the one thing
Sure.
I think Pak Teguh saying about analog switch off, but in Indonesia also we will do what to make use the most cost effective one. I think Indonesia plan to retire or sunset this 3G network as well. So within 2 years, then we just use the most cost effective one. So right, so I think 3G is the network, or I don't know, some area. 2G that is started, but I think Indonesia 3G is the first that will be retired within 2 years. So yeah, to maintain this cost effectiveness on giving value to every bit or byte that customer will pay, right?
Yeah, since everyone is chipping in, I just chip one more in.
Oh, go ahead.
About 3G, I think need to highlight here that 700 megahertz low band, particularly for agriculture, where you don't really need wide bandwidth and low latency. I think 700 could play a key role for 5G at affordable pricing.
Right. So we'll probably have to see with the non-standalone architecture where we'll still have 5G with an LTE core for some few years, perhaps, before we truly transition to a completely standalone 5G architecture, perhaps. I think we are a few years away from that, I guess, right? There was one question on cybersecurity, and I'm going to take some questions that we got before the event. And, with all these humongous amount of assets connecting to the internet, IoT, getting a fillip, the questions around cybersecurity in the 5G driven world. So Neeraj, how does one address security in the 5G world, Neeraj?
So they're very good question actually, because that is uppermost in a lot of people's mind. Because when we are talking, so 5G is nothing but a kind of federated cloud. And so we have got a cloud at the core, cloud at the region, cloud at the edge, and cloud at the far edge. So it's basically a federated cloud, and it borrows heavily from the concept of internet. It's a distributed computing. And if we look at these two environments, I am quoting these environments, then we have got a lot of precedences or use cases of how to make your network secured. And in this context, when we talk about, so if we talk about, for example, SBCs, session border controller. Now, session border controller deployment, it totally makes your network safe in terms of impervious, and nobody can get into that. Then we have got very strong authorization and RBAC, role-based access control. All these measures are going to make your network very, very safe and secure. On the protocol side, if you see, so we are using TLS, and by using TLS also, all your transactions becomes very, very safe. And so these all things are going to make the deployment of 5G very safe. There are certain observations when we are moving towards containers and microservice-based architecture, whether the security can be compromised. So no, there are now already industry standards available to make your containers secure, to make your microservices secure. So I don't think so there is going to be any serious threat towards the cybersecurity. On the radio interface side, it is already secured, because we have got the handshake protocols and all that, which is coming right from the era of GSM. So nobody can get into as a middleman attack or DDoS attack, and all that is probably ruled out.
Right. I think we have to address security holistically, right? It has to be at a device level, at a network level, and perhaps at an application and data layer as well, right?
Yes.
So I think it has to be all encompassing.
Yes.
Anyone else wants to, because security is quite a few questions around security. Anyone else wants to address security from a 5G standpoint?
I would like to add more on security.
Yeah.
So I think in telco, there are two approaches, right? When the security 101 is just put off your traffic out of the internet, right? So you have to put in GSM, you need a private network, a private APN. That's what you can do. So it's an extension of your own network, right? So, but when you are being exposed into internet, let's say in a branch or in any site, right? You can introduce the new technology from SD-WAN. SD-WAN also equipped with firewall capability, IPS, so that it can detect and then filtering your content, Trojan, malware, and all those viruses attack. So you have actually from a centralized security into more distributed one. So you clean up your traffic at the edge, not bringing into your data center at the end. So this is also the technology that can be used for security using the SD-WAN services, the new one.
Right. Got it. Thanks. I'm coming to you, Millie. So we talked about operators monetizing the 5G opportunity. So it's easier said than done, right? I mean, what would be, in your view, some of the challenges that the telecom providers might face when it comes to trying to be successful in the enterprise space?
So Frost & Sullivan did a survey earlier this year. We were trying to understand, what does industry think about this wonderful thing called 5G. So normally all the surveys and research had been in the past focused on the telcos and what the telcos have been doing together with their vendors. We took a different approach earlier this year, and we decided to involve the end users of the telcos. So we sampled also, in addition to the telecoms vertical, the other verticals that were being served by the telecoms vertical. So verticals like manufacturing, government, healthcare, transportation, logistics, and etc. So what we found was that there is still a gap existing between telcos and end users. And this gap, although it did not play a big part in preventing telcos from monetizing 4G, it will become a problem in 5G. This gap has been a traditional weak point of the telecommunications industry. And in general, the reason for the gap is the ability of telcos to understand and address need. Now, I raised this earlier in the panel, and here I would like to elaborate a bit more. Mobile operators say that their biggest challenge with driving 5G adoption is the lack of sufficient industry partnerships to build solutions that capitalize on 5G. We've been hearing about this for years. I started looking at 5G since 2017, and this was all I heard. As of this year, since we started to hear more voices coming out of the vertical segments, as people started to pick up on this great thing called 5G and wonder about whether it's relevant to them, we started to hear voices from the vertical side, the end users, the people that will be recipients of the 5G technology that the telcos will be putting out there. So it was actually not quite a surprise, but I think for the rest of you who have not been following my stories, we found that the end user companies within vertical industries are saying that they're struggling more with coming up with innovative ideas that can unlock the potential of 5G. Now, there are variations by country, there are variations by vertical, but I put these 2 points side by side to show you clearly that there's a gap. So one is building driving technology because they need to. The other one is wondering whether it's something for them based on what they are experiencing today, right? So it is economics dictates supply demand. So once pushing supply, I'm not sure people are seeing whether the demand is picking up for 5G. But with COVID, that actually tested some of the concepts, and people are on the supply side starting to realize that, hey, there are needs that we can address at the appropriate time. I'll give you an example for this, right? While I elaborated about the healthcare industry and—
Can you just wrap up in a minute? We are running short of time. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so there's a gap. And the gap between the 2 sides is glaring and needs to be addressed in order for 5G to scale. I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. I just have one last question, and I wanted to address this to Park Tegu, and this was from the Q&A window. There was a question about whether 5G could be leveraged for the banking and financial services industry in Indonesia. Do you see any potential use cases for BFSI segment in Indonesia to use? Park Tegu, very briefly, can address this?
Sure. Well, Indonesia financial technology market now is growing rapidly, and traditional bank is also moving away from the traditional branches toward mobile branch. So that kind of opportunity is also, like I said, it's also opening up chances for mobile operator, for telco to adopt 5G and to enlarge the financial sector in Indonesia even much closer to the end user, because nowadays the increasing of what you call non branchless banking is there. The adoption of fintech, especially fintech lending, is there, and everything is based upon mobile network. It's not based upon the fixed network. Therefore, if 5G is there, then for sure this sector is also benefit pretty much, and can also be like we said before, and what we discussed before, another business model can be deployed on top of it, not only by megabyte or by gigabyte, but also by usage, or also by subscription basis, or even by a number of financial that they land or they make it. So that kind of more and more non-traditional way to implement and to develop in 5G network is there, especially when we can go splicing network for it. So it can also describing and also opening up the opportunity, the business opportunity and business model as well in Indonesia. For sure, with right now, the internet penetration is 73%. Number of internet user is more than 193 million across Indonesia. 5G network is needed to provide all with broadband for all. So that's my point.
Thank you so much, Park Tegu, and we have completely run out of time. And while we have other questions, but I request all those who couldn't get their question answered in this panel, maybe we can get it addressed offline through the interchange platform. On that note, I would like to thank all the panelists, Mealy, Park, Elfie and Pa, Tegu and Neeraj. Thank you so much for joining this panel and sharing your perspectives. So on that note, I just want to summarize by saying that I think there is enough and more opportunity with 5G. So while it is definitely going to create a lot of monetizing opportunities for service providers, but I think what is really needed is for the whole ecosystem to come together. And it's definitely going to definitely going to benefit enterprises, be it manufacturing, healthcare, banking, and also going to definitely benefit consumers and society at large. On that note, I would like to end and hand it over back to Talitha from SingX. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. David, and thank you to all panelists for sharing. It has been indeed a very insightful session and very interesting. Now it's time for me to invite you to take a moment here and complete the to provide feedback on today's session and share your ideas for future ones. Okay, so your feedback is extremely important for us to bring more and more such sessions to you. Do not forget to join our interchange community for continuing the conversation and deeper discussions from today's session. Once again, thank you for joining us, and we hope you found it very useful. After this, please join IIoT India breakout session. You can click the link in the chat box. We look forward to seeing you in the interchange after this session. Take care and have a good day.